Good afternoon, Reading Room. How are you? This is Dr. Annette Feravich with our third day on our 3 days on, and we are here reading the Pilgrim's Regress on day number 6, and so therefore that means that we are on chapter number 6 in our Pilgrim's Regress. You may have already seen that. It is day 281 in the classroom. It is December 4th, and we are ready to get reading. Book 6, Northward Along the Canyon. Argument. The collapse of common sense drives him on to the harder and severer systems of our own day. He glances at Anglo-Catholicism, humanism, and classicism, at the world in fine of Messrs. I don't even know what that is. At the world in fine of Messrs. Irving Babbitt, T.S. Eliot, Santayana, the Criterion, etc. But no compromise is possible between their world and the desire, which is still the motive of all his thoughts. Finally, he tries the hardest and severest of all, Nordic fascism and Marxian communism. Their asceticism attracts his conscience, but in each he discovers behind the heroic facade a genuine recrudescence of primeval cruelty and a rejection, along with the humane, of the human itself. That's interesting. For being unlike the magnanimous man that yet ape him, and that in such particulars as they can. Aristotle. Much of the soul they talk, but all awry, and in themselves seek virtue. Milton. I do not admire the excess of someone virtue, unless I am shown at the same time the excess of the opposite virtue. A man does not prove his greatness by standing at an extremity, but by touching both extremities at once and filling all that lies between them. Pascal. Blaise Pascal, Travis, who you were named after. Contempt is a well-recognized defensive reaction. I.A. Richards. Chapter 1, First Steps to the North. It is of no use keeping to the road, said Virtue. We must explore the cliff edge as we go along and make trial descents from point to point. Begging your pardon, sir, said Drudge. I know these parts very well, and there is no way down, at least within 30 miles. You'll miss nothing by keeping to the road for today, at any rate. Let's make sure we've got there. Yeah, see, not exactly where we want that. That's better. How do you know? Asked Virtue. Have you ever tried? Oh, bless you, Yes, said Drudge. I've often tried to get across the canyon when I was a youngster. Clearly we had better follow the road, said John. I do not feel quite satisfied, said Virtue, but we can always take the cliffs on the way back. I have an idea that if there is a way down, it will be at the extreme north where this gorge opens on the sea, or failing everything, we might manipulate the mouth of the gorge by boat. In the meantime, I dare say we might do worse than press by road. I quite agree, said John. Then I saw the three set forward on a more desolate march than I had yet beheld. On every side of them, the tableland seemed perfectly flat, but their muscles and lungs soon told them that there was a slight but continuous rise. There was little vegetation, here a shrub and there some grass, but the most of it was brown earth and moss and rock, and the road beneath them was stone. The gray sky was never broken, and I do not remember that they saw a single bird, and it was so bleak that if they had stopped at any time to rest, the sweat grew cold on them instantly. Virtue never abated his pace, and Drudge kept even with him, though always a respectful yard behind. But I saw that John grew footsore and began to lag. For some hours he was always inventing pretexts to stop, and finally he said, "Friends, it is no use. I can go no further." "But you must," said Virtue. "The young gentleman is soft, sir, very soft," said Drudge. "He is not used to this sort of thing. We'll have to help him along." So they took him one by each arm and helped him along for a few hours. They found nothing to eat or drink in the waste. Towards evening they heard a desolate voice crying, my wee," and looked up, and there was a seagull hanging in the currents of the wind, as though it sauntered an invisible stair towards the low rain clouds. "Good," cried Virtue. "We are nearing the coast." "It's a good step yet, sir," said Drudge. "These gulls come 40 miles inland and more in bad weather." Then they plodded on for many more miles, and the sky began to turn from sunless gray to starless black, and they looked and saw a little shanty by the roadside, and there they knocked on the door. 3 pale men. When they were let in, they found 3 young men, all very thin and pale, seated by the stove under the low roof of the hut. There was some sacking on a bench along one wall, and little comfort else. "You will fare badly here," said one of the 3 men, "but I am a steward, and it is my duty, according to my office, to share my supper with you. You may come in. His name is Mr. Neo Angular." "I am sorry that my convictions do not allow me to repeat my friend's offer," said one of the others, "but I have had to abandon the humanitarian and egalitarian fallacies. His name was Mr. Neoclassical." "I hope," said the third, "that your wanderings in lonely places do not mean that you have any of the romantic virus still in your blood. His name was Mr. Humanist." John was too tired and Drudge too respectful to reply, but Virtue said to Mr. Neo Angular, "You are very kind. You are saving our lives." "I am not kind at all," said Mr. Neo Angular with some warmth. "I am doing my duty. My ethics are based on dogma, not on feeling." "I understand you very well," said Virtue. "May I shake hands with you?" "Can it be," said the other, "that you are one of us? You are a Catholic? A scholastic?" "I know nothing about that," said Virtue, "but I know that the rule is to be obeyed because it is a rule and not because it appeals to my feelings at the moment." "I see you are not one of us," said Angular, "and you are undoubtedly damned. Virtues, oh, there we go again. Paganorum splendida vicia. Now let us eat." Then I dreamed that the 3 pale men produced 3 tins of bully beef and 6 biscuits, and Angular shared his with the guest. There was very little for each, and I thought that the best share fell to John and Drudge, for Virtue and the young steward entered into a kind of rivalry who should leave most for the others. "Our fare is simple," said Mr. Neoclassical, "and perhaps unwelcome to palates that have been reared on the kickshaws of lower countries, but you see the perfection of form. This beef is a perfect cube, this biscuit a true square. You will admit," said Mr. Humanist, "that at least our meal is quite free from any lingering flavor of the old romantic sauces." "Quite free," said John, staring at the empty tin. "It's better than radishes, sir," said Drudge. "Do you live here, gentlemen?" said Virtue when the empty tins had been removed. "We do," said Mr. Humanist. "We are founding a new community. At present we suffer the hardship of pioneers and have to import our food. But when we have brought the country under cultivation, we shall have plenty, as much plenty as needed for the practice of temperance." "You interest me exceedingly," said Virtue. "What are the principles of this community?" "Catholicism, humanism, classicism," said all 3. "Catholicism? Then you are all stewards." "Certainly not," said Classical and Humanist. "At least you all believe in the landlord." "I have no interest in the question," said Classical, "and And I, said Humanist, know perfectly well that the landlord is fallible. And I, said Angular, know perfectly well that he is a fact. This is very surprising, said Virtue. I do not see how you have come together or what your common principles can possibly be. We are united by common antagonism to a common enemy, said Humanist. You must understand that we are three brothers, the sons of Mr. Enlightenment of the town of Claptrap. I know him, said John. Our father was married twice, continued Humanist. Once to a lady named Epicurkasha, and afterwards to Euphuia. Jeez Louise. By his first wife, he had a son called Sigismund, who is thus our stepbrother. I know him too, said John. We are the children of his second marriage, said Humanist. Then, cried Virtue, we are related if you care to acknowledge the kinship. You have probably heard that Euphuia had a child before she married your father. I was that child, though I confess I never discovered who my father was, and enemies have hinted that I'm a bastard. You have said quite sufficient, replied Angular. You can hardly expect that the subject should be agreeable to us. I might add that my office, if there were nothing else, sets me apart even from my legitimate relations. And what about the common antagonism, said John. We were all brought up, said Humanist, by our stepbrother in the university at Ascropolis, and we learned there to see that whoever stays with Mr. Halfways must either come on to Ascropolis or else remain at Thrill as a perpetual minion of his brown daughter. You had not been with Mr. Halfways yourselves, then? Asked John. Certainly not. We learned to hate him from watching the effect which his music had on other people. Hatred of him is the first thing that unites us. Next, we discovered how residence in Ascropolis inevitably leads to the giant's dungeon. I know all about that too, said John. Our common hatred therefore links us together against the giant, against Ascropolis, and against Mr. Halfways, but specially against the latter, said Classical. I should rather say, remarked Angular, against half measures and compromises of all sorts, against any pretense that there is any kind of goodness or decency, any even tolerable temporary resting place on this side of the Grand Canyon. And that, said Classical, is why Angular is for me in one sense the enemy, but in another the friend. I cannot agree with his notions about the other side of the canyon, but just because he relegates his delusions to the other side, he is free to agree with me about this side and to be an implacable exposure, like myself, of all attempts to foist upon us any transcendental, romantical, optimistic trash. My own feeling, said Humanist, is rather that Angular is with me in guarding against any confusion of the levels of experience. He canalizes all the mystical nonsense, the sheshut and wanderlust and nympholepsy, and transfers them to the far side. That prevents their drifting about on this side and hindering our real function. It leaves us free to establish a really tolerable and even comfortable civilization here on the plateau, a culture based alike on those truths which Mr. Sensible acknowledges and on those which the giant reveals, but throwing over both alike a graceful veil of illusion. And that way we shall remain human. We shall not become beasts with the giant, nor abortive angels with Mr. Halfways. The young gentleman is asleep, sir, said Drudge, and indeed John had sunk down some time ago. You must excuse him, said Virtue. He found the road long today. Then I saw that the 6 men lay down together in sacking. The night was far colder than the night they passed in Mr. Sensible's house, but as there was here no pretense of comfort, and they lay huddled together in the narrow hut, John slept warmer here than at Thelema. Chapter 3, Neo-Angular. When they rose in the morning, John was so footsore and his limbs ached so that he knew not how to continue his journey. Drudge assured them that the coast could not be very far. He thought that Virtue could reach it and return in a day, and that John might await him in the hut. As for John himself, he was loth to burden hosts who lived in such apparent poverty, but Mr. Angular constrained him to stay when he had explained that the secular virtue of hospitality was worthless and care for the afflicted a sin if it proceeded from humanitarian sentiment, but that he was obliged to act as he did by the rules of his order. So in my dream, I saw Drudge and Virtue set out northwards alone, while John remained with the three pale men. In the forenoon, he had a conversation with Angular. You believe then, said John, that there is a way across the canyon. I know there is. If you will let me take you to Mother Kirk, she will carry you over in a moment. And yet I am not sure that I am not sailing under false colors. When I set out from home, crossing the canyon was never my thoughts. Still less was Mother Kirk. It does not matter in the least what was in your thoughts. It does to me. You see, my only motive for crossing is the hope that something I'm looking for may be on the other side. That is a dangerous subjective motive. What is this something? I saw an island. Then you must forget it as soon as you can. Islands are the halfway's concern. I assure you, you must eradicate every trace of that nonsense from your mind before I can help you. But how can you help me after removing the only thing I want to be helped to? What is the use of telling a hungry man that you will grant him his desires, providing there is no question of eating? If you do not want to cross the canyon, there is no more to be said. But then you must realize where you are. Go on with your island if you like, but do not pretend that it is anything but a part of the land of destruction, this side of the canyon. If you are a sinner, for heaven's sake, have the grace to be a cynic too. But how can you say that the island is all bad when it is longing for the island and nothing else that has brought me this far? It makes no difference. All on this side of the canyon is much of a muchness. If you confine yourself to this side, then the spirit of the age is right. But that is not what Mother Kirk said. She particularly insisted that some of the food was much less poisonous than the rest. So you have met Mother Kirk. No wonder that you are confused. You had no business to talk to her except through a qualified steward. Depend upon it, you have misunderstood every word she said. Then there was reason, too. She refused to say that the island was an illusion, but perhaps, like Mr. Sensible, you have quarreled with Mr. Reason. Reason is divine, but how should you understand her? You are a beginner. For you, the only safe commerce with reason is to learn from your superiors the dogmata in which her deliverances have been codified for general use. Look here, said John, have you ever seen my island? God forbid. And you have never heard Mr. Halfway's either. Never, and I never will. Do you take me for an escapist? Then there is at least one object in the world of which I know more than you. I have tasted what you call romantic trash. You have only talked about it. You need not tell me that there is a danger in it and an element of evil. Do you suppose that I have not felt that danger and that evil 1,000 times more than you? But I know also that the evil in it is not what I went to find, and that I should have sought nothing and found nothing without it. I know this by experience, as I know a dozen things about it, of which you betray your ignorance as often as you speak. Forgive me if I am rude, but how is it possible that you can advise me in this matter? Would you recommend a eunuch as confessor to a man whose difficulties lay in the realm of chastity? Would a man born blind be my best guide against the lust of the eye? But I am getting angry, and you have shared your biscuit with me. I ask your pardon. It is part of my office to bear insults with patience, said Mr. Angular. Chapter 4, Humanist. In the afternoon, Mr. Humanist took John out to show him the garden by whose produce. In time, the new culture was to become self-supporting. As there was no human or indeed animal habitation within sight, no wall or fence had been deemed necessary, but the area of the garden had been marked out by a line of stone and seashells alternately arranged, and this was necessary, as the garden would else have been indistinguishable from the waste. A few paths, also marked by stones and shells, were arranged in a geometric pattern. You see, said Mr. Humanist, we have quite abandoned the ideas of the old romantic landscape gardeners. You notice a certain severity. A landscape gardener would have had a nodding grove over there on the right, and a mound on the left, and winding paths, and a pond, and flower beds. He would have filled the obscurer parts with the means of sensuality, the formless potato and your romantically irregular cabbage. You see, there is nothing of the sort here. Nothing at all, said John. At present, of course, it is not very fruitful, but we are pioneers. Do you ever try digging it? Suggested John. Why, no, said Mr. Humanist. You see, it is pure rock, an inch below the surface, so we do not disturb the soil. That would remove the graceful veil of illusion which is so necessary to the human point of view. Chapter 5, Food from the North. Late that evening, the door of the hut opened and Virtue staggered in, dropping to a sitting position by the stove. He was exhausted, and it was long before he had his breath to talk. When he had, his first words were, "You must leave this place, gentlemen. It is in danger." "Where is Drudge?" said John. "We stayed there." "And what?" "He stayed there." "And what is this danger?" said Mr. Humanist. "I'm going to tell you. By the way, there's no way over the gorge northward. We have been on a fool's errand then," said John, "ever since we left the main road. Except that now we know," replied Virtue. "But I must eat before I can tell my story. Tonight I am able to return our friend's hospitality," and with that he produced from various parts of his clothing the remains of a handsome cold pie, 2 bottles of strong beer, and a little flask of rum. For some time there was silence in the hut, and when the meal was finished and a little water had been boiled so that each had a glass of hot grog, Virtue began his story. Chapter 6, Furthest North. It is all like this as far as the mountain, about 15 miles, and there is nothing to tell of our journey except rock and moss and a few gulls. The mountains are frightful as you approach them, but the road runs up to a pass, and we had not much difficulty. Beyond the pass you get into a little rocky valley, and it was here that we first found any signs of habitation. The valley is a regular warren of caves inhabited by dwarfs. There are several species of them, I gather, though I only distinguish 2, a black kind with black shirts and a red kind who call themselves Marximania. They are all very fierce and apparently quarrel a good deal, but they all acknowledge some kind of vassalage to this man Savage. At least they made no difficulty in letting me through when they heard I wanted to see him, beyond insisting on giving me a guard. It was there I lost Drudge. He said he had come to join the Red Dwarfs, and would I mind going on alone. He was just the same up to the end, civil as ever. But he was down one of their burrows and apparently quite at home before I could get in a word. Then the dwarfs took me on. I didn't care for the arrangement much. They were not men, you know, not dwarf men, but real dwarfs, trolls. They could talk, and they walk on 2 legs, but the structure must be quite different from ours. I felt all the time if they killed me, it wouldn't be murder any more than if a crocodile or a gorilla killed me. It is a different species, however it came there. Different faces. Well, they kept taking me up and up. It was all rocky, zigzags, round and round. Fortunately, I do not get giddy. My chief danger was the wind whenever we got on a ridge, for of course my guides, being only some 3 feet high, did not offer it the same target. I had one or two narrow escapes. Savage's Nest is a terrifying place. It is a long hall like a barn, and when I first caught sight of it, halfway up the sky from where they were leading me, I thought to myself that wherever else we were going, it could not be there. It looked so inaccessible, but on we went. One thing you must get into your heads is that there are caves all the way up, all inhabited. The whole mountain must be honeycombed. I saw thousands of the dwarfs, like an anthill, and not a man in place except me. From Savage's Nest, you look straight down to the sea. I should think it is the biggest sheer drop on any coast. It was from there that I saw the mouth of the gorge. The mouth is only a lowering of the cliff from the lowest part of the opening. It is still thousands of feet to the sea. There is no conceivable landing. It is no use to anyone but seagulls. But you want to hear about Savage. He sat on a high chair at the end of his barn, a very big man, almost a giant. When I say that I don't mean his height, I had the same feeling about him that I had about the dwarfs, that doubt about the species. He was dressed in skins and had an iron helmet on his head with horns stuck in it. He had a woman there too, a great big woman with yellowish hair and high cheekbones. Grimhild, her name is. And the funny thing is that she is the sister of an old friend of yours, John. She is Mr. Halfway's elder daughter. Apparently Savage came down to thrill and carried her off, and what is stranger still, both the girl and the old gentleman were rather pleased about it than otherwise. As soon as the dwarfs brought me in, Savage rapped on the table and bellowed out, "Lay the board for us men," and she sat about laying. He didn't say anything to me for a long time. He just sat and looked and sang. He had only one song. He was singing it, and he was singing it off and on all the time. I was there. I remember bits of it. Wind age, wolf age, ere the world crumbles. Shard age, spear age, shields are broken. Then there was another bit began. East sits the old in iron forest, feeds amidst it Fenris children. I sat down after a bit, for I did not want him to think I was afraid of him. When the food was on the table, he asked me to have some, so I had it. He offered me a sweet drink, very strong, in a horn, so I drank it. Then he shouted and drank himself, and said that mead in a horn was all he could offer me at present. But soon he said, "I shall drink the blood of men from skulls." There was a lot of this sort of stuff. We ate roast pork with our fingers. He kept on singing his song and shouting. It was only after dinner that he began to talk connectedly. I wish I could remember it all. This is the important part of my story. It is hard to understand it without being a biologist. These dwarfs are different species and an older species than ours, but then the specific variation is always liable to reappear in human children. They revert to the dwarf. Consequently, they are multiplying very fast. They are being increased both by ordinary breeding among themselves and also from without by those harkbacks or changelings. He spoke of lots of subspecies besides the Marxamani, Mussolini, Limini, Swatisi, Gangomani. I can't remember them all. For a long time I couldn't see where he himself came in. At last he told me he is breeding and training them for a descent on this country. When I tried to find out why, for a long time he would only stare at me and sing a song. Finally, as near as I could get it, his theory seemed to be that fighting was an end in itself. Mind you, he was not drunk. He said that he could understand old-fashioned people who believed in the landlord and kept the rules and hoped to go up and live in the landlord's castle when they had to leave this country. They have something to live for, he said, and if their belief was true, their behavior would be perfectly sensible. But as their belief is not true, there remains only one way of life fit for a man. This other way of life is something he called heroism, a master morality, or violence. All the other people in between, he said, are plowing the sand. He went on railing at the people in Claptrap for ages, and also Mr. Sensible. These are the dregs of men, he said. They are always thinking of happiness. They are scrapping together and storing up and trying to build. Can they not see that the law of the world is against them? Where will any of them be 100 years hence? I said they might be building for posterity. And who will posterity build for? He asked. Can you see that it is all bound to come to nothing in the end? And the end may come tomorrow, and however late it comes, to those who look back, all their happiness will seem but a moment that has slipped away and left nothing behind. You can't gather happiness. Do you go to bed with any more in hand on the day you have had 1,000 pleasures? I asked if his heroism left anything behind it either, but he said it did. The excellent deed, he said, is external. The hero alone has the privilege that death for him is not defeat, and the lamenting over him and the memory is part of the good he aimed for, and the moment of battle fears nothing from the future because it has already cast security away. He talked a lot like that. I asked him what he thought of the Escropolitans, and he roared with laughter and said, when the cruels meet the clevers, there will not be even the ghost of a tug of war. Then I asked him if he knew you three, and he laughed louder still. He said that Angular might turn out on an enemy worth fighting when he grew up. But I don't know, he said. Likely enough, he is an Escropolitan. Turned inside out, poacher turned gamekeeper. As for the other pair, they are the last even of the last men. I asked him what he meant. The men of Claptrap, he said, may have some excuse for their folly, for they at least still believe that your country is a place where happiness is possible. But your two friends are madmen without qualification. They claim to have reached rock bottom. They talk of being disillusioned. They think they have reached the furthest north, or if I were not here to the north of them. They live on a rock that will never feed man between a chasm that they cannot cross and a home of a giant to whom they dare not return. And still they maunder of a culture and a security. If all men who try to build are but polishing the brasses on a sinking ship, then your pale friends are the supreme fools who polish with the rest, though they know and admit that the ship is sinking. Their humanism and what not is but the old dream with a new name. Their humanism and what not is but the old dream with a new name. The rot in the world is too deep, and the leak in the world is too wide. They may patch and tinker as they please. They will not save it. Better give in. Better cut the wood with the grain. If I am to live in a world of destruction, let me be its agent, not its patient. In the end, he said, I will make this concession to your friends. They do live further north than anyone but me. They are more like men than any of their race. They shall have this honor when I lead the dwarfs to war, that humanist skulls shall be the first from which I drink blood of a man. The Grimhild here shall have classicals. Is that what that says? Shall have classicals. Yep. That was about all he said. He made me go out on the cliffs with him. It was all I could do to keep my footing, he said. He said, this wind blows straight from the pole. It will make a man of you. I think he was trying to frighten me. In the end, I got away. He loaded me up with food for myself and you. Feed them up, he said. There is not enough blood in them at present to quench the thirst of a dwarfed sword. Then I came away, and I am very tired. Chapter 7, Fool's Paradise. I should like to meet this savage, said Angular. He seems to be a very clever headed man. I don't know about that, said Humanist. He and his dwarfs seem to me to be just the thing I am fighting against, the logical conclusion of Escropolis against which I raise the banner of humanism. All the wild atavistic emotions which old halfways set free under false pretenses. I am not at all surprised that he likes a Valkyrie for a daughter, and which young halfways unmask, but cherishes when he has unmasked them. Where can they end but in complete abandonment of the humans? I am glad to hear of him. He shows how necessary I am. I agree, said John in great excitement. But how are you going to fight? Where are your troops? Where is your base of supplies? You can't feed an army on a garden of stones and seashells. It is intelligence that counts, said Humanist. It moves nothing, said John. You see, the savage is scalding hot and you are cold. You must get heat to rival his heat. Do you think you can rout 1,000,000 armed dwarfs by being not romantic? If Mr. Virtue will not be offended, said Classical, I would suggest that he dreamed the whole thing. Mr. Virtue is romantic. He is paying for his wish fulfillment dreams, as he will always pay with a fear fulfillment dream. It is well known that nobody lives further north than we, but Virtue was too tired to defend his story, and soon all the occupants of the hut were asleep. And then we will be moving on when we come back after our 4 days off to Book 7, Southward Along the Canyon. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We have finished another week in the classroom. We are finishing with day 281. It is December 4th. Thank you so much for joining me here in the classroom as we are reading C.S. Lewis's, Clive Staples Lewis's book, The Pilgrim's Regress. It's really a difficult read, isn't it? It's a difficult read. I find it to be difficult. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks so much for joining me, where we're working hard to get your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. Thanks.